So you've been dragging your feet a little bit, but you think it's finally at a point of no return and you are going to have to get a divorce. So realizing this, realizing things have just gotten to a point where they cannot be continued, you decide you're going to talk to an attorney because this is a complicated process. There's a lot of potential legal ramifications. And so you make a phone call to the first attorney. It looks like a pretty promising one. Make that phone call and you decide you're going to set up an initial consultation. Get some basic advice, get some information, find out what your legal rights and obligations are, see if you can hire this person. But when you call, they run a conflict check, is what they call it, and it turns out they've already met with your spouse and therefore they refuse to meet with you. So you call up the next attorney. Another one looks pretty promising. You find the exact same thing. Your spouse has already called them and this attorney refuses to see you. Uh-oh, is this a problem? I'm Arizona attorney David Enebolton, and in this video I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of an old, cheap, dirty trick, the idea of conflicting out your spouse. So here's the theory. When you have an attorney in a divorce process, generally speaking, that attorney has to function as an advocate for one side or the other. We're not talking about mediations, we're talking about actually representing a person. And so every attorney is required generally, per the ethical rules, to maintain a conflict database, meaning they have this big list of people that they've met with, that they've had any sort of tactical discussions with, and they also will list out other sides of this particular case. So in a divorce, for example, if I as an attorney meet with wife, and then later on husband comes to me, it doesn't make any sense for me, having had all these privileged discussions with wife, to now be able to turn around and have these same privileged discussions, having all this tactical information from wife with the husband. So because of that, we have these rules that say we get conflicted out, is the language they use, meaning I can't meet with husband in that situation or whoever the other party is. Now there's the idea of this old trick that you go around and you essentially call up all the family law attorneys in town before your spouse can get to them, and that way your spouse is kind of stuck without representation. And keep in mind, I am not promoting that you engage in dirty tricks. I'm not promoting that you do anything unethical or improper, and this, in my mind, is an unethical and improper tactic, but it's one that very often can be viewed in a way that can be easily explained away, because a lot of times people are just interviewing attorneys. And so because of that, I want you to be aware that this potential dirty trick is out there. Now, this is going to make more of a difference in some locations than others. For example, if you're in a really small town and there's only a couple of attorneys in town, this is going to be a big deal if this happens. On the other hand, if you're in this huge city and there's hundreds of family law attorneys out there, if your spouse goes out and meets with 2 or 3 attorneys, it's probably not going to make any big real difference. So to the extent that the size of your town has more or less attorneys, that can really make a difference. And I'm in a big town, so it doesn't really make any difference from my perspective, because there's always more family law attorneys out there. Some situations where I see that this will have more of an impact is when both parties know an attorney or have used an attorney for something in the past and they both want to go to this person. I've had this happen quite a few times where somebody I know, as some acquaintance approaches me that I've known for a long time, and I might know both of the parties, and if I don't feel like I'm actually conflicted out from that situation, once I start having a privileged conversation with one of the two about the divorce, now I am. And so the other person might come to me later and say, oh, I need you to represent me in this divorce. And I say, sorry, the other person approached me first. Again, I'm not saying that you should go out and do this kind of a trick. What I'm saying is you should be aware that this is a possibility. So if you know that divorce is looming, you need to take some action, especially if you're going to have to hire an attorney here. And the sooner you can get to an attorney, or the sooner you can start shopping around for attorneys and talking to them, the better position you're going to be in, because you're going to prevent this. If you wait, if you drag your feet and you say, I don't want this to happen, and then it just sort of bulldozes you, and then all of a sudden you're immersed in the situation, but your spouse has already hopped around, got their attorney, conflicted you out of attorneys, you could run into a problem. So that's the big moral of the story. Don't sleep on your rights. When you know this is happening, take some action. Go out there, get an attorney. At least, at a minimum, if you think divorce is a possibility, go talk to an attorney and get some basic information so that you know what the possibilities of what your rights are, what your obligations are as the divorce is coming forward are going to be. At any point that you have any sort of questions, please reach out to an attorney. Just as a general rule, of course, you can contact my office, but make sure it's somebody licensed in your state. We're licensed in Arizona, and just get basic information so that you know what your rights and obligations are.